My sister, who had been absent for several years, finally came back home. She claimed that she wanted to repay our adoptive parents and bring them back to live with us. Feeling guilty, Mom and Dad agreed to her wish. However, once she arrived, she relentlessly pressured me to marry her adoptive brother. I rejected her advances, but she then spread false rumors online, accusing me of intentionally losing her. She even went as far as hiring someone to abduct me, planning to hand me over to her troublesome brother as a plaything. Her actions were driven by resentment, all because she wished I had been the one to go missing instead of her. I suddenly woke up to find that it was the same day she came back home. She was introducing her troublesome brother to me, saying she thought we would make a great couple. Her voice sent chills down my spine, and I remembered the years of abuse I had suffered. Instinctively, I almost collapsed to the floor, cradling my head. Maya continued pushing me to get closer to Lucas, her adoptive brother, claiming that he was such a great guy and would spoil me if we got together. But I barely registered her words. All I could do was stare at Maya, her face appearing so innocent, though something felt wrong. She should have looked menacing, her makeup flawless and her clothes extravagant, her eyes seething with hatred toward me. I imagined her in my past life, brandishing a whip and striking me repeatedly, leaving painful marks on my skin. She would scream, asking why I was the one who was lost and not her, why my parents had searched for me frantically, and now, even though she was back, they could think only of me. Her laughter would grow louder as she saw me in pain, and Lucas, her adoptive brother, would stand nearby, mocking me and ensuring I didn't get hurt in any way that would spoil the fun. By evening, I would have felt like a fish out of water, trapped and gasping for air with no way to escape. But now, standing before me was Maya, wearing a simple white dress, smiling sweetly and calling me sister. I looked around. Dad was still at work, and Mom sat in the living room, watching Maya with excitement. However, when her gaze shifted to Maya's adoptive parents, there was only patience mixed with displeasure. Her adoptive parents wore smug expressions, each holding a large bag and staring with greedy eyes as they leaned against the doorframe. Lucas, on the other hand, was hunched over, laughing and playing games, his greasy appearance nauseating. In that moment, I had an epiphany. I was reborn. I was brought back to the day Maya returned with her adoptive family, the same day my nightmare began. Maya's eyes gleamed with expectation, and just as in my past life, she couldn't wait to set me up with Lucas. I remembered how, despite my discomfort with her words, I had pretended not to hear them before, not wanting to ruin my mom's happiness. But Maya had quickly burst into tears, accusing me of looking down on her and her adoptive parents. In that moment, I felt compelled by our blood ties to comfort her, which only fed her manipulative tactics. Time and time again, her schemes caused me immense suffering, ultimately costing me my life. This time, I wasn't going to let familial obligations cloud my judgment. I looked Maya in the eye and slowly asked, "If he's so great, why don't you marry him?" She seemed stunned by my response, and for a moment, she froze. Then, with her usual innocent expression, she started to cry, claiming that she was only looking out for my best interests. Maya tugged at her adoptive parents' sleeves, signaling them to back her up, hoping they would intimidate me into submission. The couple exchanged knowing looks and, perhaps having already made a decision, dropped their luggage and walked over to me. They scrutinized me closely, especially Lucas's mother, who attempted to pinch my butt, claiming that women with fuller figures were better for childbirth. In my previous life, I had been caught off guard by her, and in her cruel grip, tears nearly spilled from my eyes. When I checked afterward, the bruise she left was still vivid. Yet, Lucas's mother looked at me disdainfully, declaring that I wasn't worthy with such a small backside. Her husband eagerly agreed, adding that if I couldn't bear a son, there would be no marriage certificate. They spoke as though their plans were already set in stone, completely oblivious to how unrealistic and absurd they were. It was like a bad dream, and they treated me as though I were just a tool to be used for their benefit. Lucas's mother had already started acting like the evil mother-in-law, demanding that I carry her suitcase upstairs as if it were my duty as her future daughter-in-law. The audacity of it all enraged my mom, who had never felt such humiliation. Before I could speak, my mom wanted to throw them out. Despite being Maya's adoptive parents, they had never treated her kindly, often abusing her. If not for Maya's constant pleas, my parents would have involved the authorities. But instead, they had agreed to let them stay. Seeing my mum struggle with her emotions, Maya quickly intervened, defending her adoptive parents by claiming they were just straightforward people who wanted me to be their daughter-in-law. As Maya shed a few tears, she began recounting the hardships she had faced after going missing. Maya had been only 7 when she disappeared. She had been throwing a tantrum over a toy, even though she already had a set. That night, she snuck into my room and tried to throw my toys away, but was kidnapped by human traffickers and vanished. My parents spent over 10 years searching for her, consumed by guilt. When they finally found her, they couldn't help but try to make up for the lost time, even tolerating her absurd actions without scolding her. Mom's guilt over Maya made her suppress her anger, and she continued to make excuses for Maya's behavior. Just as I had reached my breaking point, Lucas's mother moved toward me again, and I swiftly sidestepped, kicking her suitcase. She tripped and fell hard on her back, gasping in pain. Sitting on the floor, she glared at me, demanding to know why I hadn't helped her up. Her tone was a harsh reminder of how many times I had put up with her overbearing attitude. Lucas's father gave me a disdainful look and spat on the ground, then chimed in, saying that someone like me needed to be trained properly when marrying into their family. Maya helped her adoptive mother up, blaming me for the fall and telling me to apologize. She even suggested that if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to marry Lucas. The audacity of it all made me want to laugh, and I felt anger rise in me. I wasn't desperate to marry Lucas, nor would I beg for his family's approval. Before I could hold myself back, I kicked Lucas's father's suitcase, causing a large dent to form. With fierce determination, I glared at them and demanded, "Are you all still dreaming? How dare you think you can make demands of me?" My parents might have tolerated them in the past because of Maya, but I owed them nothing, and I wasn't going to let them walk all over me any longer. Maya tried to manipulate me, but as soon as things reached a breaking point, her adoptive parents didn't dare speak up. They looked away, repeatedly glancing at Maya, showing their cowardice. Maya, trembling with fear, redirected her attention to me and began to scold me. "Sister, I'm only trying to help you. If you don't want to, that's fine. But why do you have to be so harsh?" Her face showed extreme distress with red eyes, as if she was on the verge of tears. She turned to my mom and said, "Mom, I'm really doing this for my sister, but it seems like she's angry with me. I didn't mean it." Before she could finish, I grabbed her arm and forcefully shoved her toward Lucas. Unprepared, she stumbled straight into his arms. Lucas was in the middle of a game when Maya collided with him, causing his phone to fall. He cursed loudly and shoved her away, shouting, "Get off me!" Maya's head hit the door, leaving a noticeable swollen red mark on her forehead. At that moment, Maya leaned against her mother, sobbing. "Does my sister not like me, Mom? Should I just leave?" She sniffled, playing the innocent, wronged victim, making her mother feel sorry for her. My mum glanced at me and lightly shook her head, signaling me to stop arguing with Maya. I ignored her and continued staring at Maya. "This is how you always acted when we were little, and you're still the same now. Don't you have any idea how I feel about you? Just look at yourself. What's there about you that I should like?" Maya looked taken aback, her eyes wide in disbelief. She seemed shocked by my words. In my previous life, before I discovered what she had done, I truly loved her as my sister. No matter how mischievous she was, I never considered cutting our bond. She was still my dearest sister at heart. But later, I realized that my genuine love had been wasted. In my past life, I tried so hard to be a good sister. I thought that since I had finally found her, I should treat her well and even make up for the hardships she had endured. But I never expected that Maya resented me from the start. She was bitter that I had grown up loved by our parents, while she had been kidnapped, sold into the mountains to be a child bride, and mistreated. She hated me, even though none of that was my fault. That's why she always tried to set me up with Lucas. Maya knew that the Lucas family was toxic. His parents preferred sons over daughters, and Lucas had dropped out of school young, spending his days playing games or getting into fights. He had been to the police station countless times and was notorious in the area. Marrying me to such a person would have meant descending from the clouds and stepping into the mud, experiencing all the suffering she once had. That's what Maya wanted me to endure. But by the time I realized it, it was already too late. I was kidnapped, thrown into the countryside, my limbs broken, my tongue torn out, left to suffer in bed while enduring endless torment from Maya and Lucas. But in this rebirth, I vowed to give them everything I had. I would send them straight to hell with my sincerity. Maya's voice trembled with fake tears as she said, "Sister, I'm really doing this for your own good. Why do you always hate me?" Her voice quivered with a wronged tone, but I shot back. "Didn't you say Lucas was great? You two grew up together and know each other well. Isn't that a match made in heaven?" Maya's tears fell even more heavily. I sneered. "Do you think marrying Lucas is a bad thing?" At that, Lucas's parents' expressions changed, and even Lucas showed a trace of malice. From my memories, I knew Maya had always feared Lucas's parents. When Lucas was drunk and unhappy, he would beat her. But it was more out of fear than hatred. Even when my parents found her, she still feared them deeply, but directed all her resentment toward me. When I saw their reactions, I instinctively recoiled, shaking my head. "I didn't mean that," Maya stammered. Lucas glanced at my mom, not taking her seriously, and even patted Maya's head in a disgusting manner. "Brother has cared for you a lot over the years. Don't be such an ungrateful wolf," he said, his tone dripping with mockery. Maya bit her lip, both terrified and filled with barely concealed hatred for me. "Sister, I've already suffered so much over the years. Why do you keep bullying me?" Tears streamed down her face, and she looked heartbroken, almost breaking our parents' hearts. "Sienna, your sister's finally back, so you should be quieter. What's most important is that the family is together," Mom sighed. She always showed more favor to Maya, especially on the day of her return. Maya immediately became smug but quickly returned to her innocent little girl act. She walked over to me slowly, took my hand, and sweetly said, "Sister, I promise I won't argue with you anymore. Please don't dislike me, okay?" Her acting was flawless, but after everything I had endured, all I wanted was to expose her facade. I walked over to Maya, gently wiped the tears from her eyes and patted her face lightly. "My silly sister, what nonsense are you talking about? I clearly wanted to send you to hell." After moving all the luggage into the living room, Mom asked the housekeeper to take it to the guest room. The guest room was on the first floor. When Maya and I were younger, we used to live on the second floor with our parents for convenience. After I turned 18, my parents gave me my own space and let me move to the third floor. Now that Maya was back, my parents arranged a room for her directly across from mine, wanting her to feel that even after being gone for years, their love for her hadn't changed. But when the rooms were assigned, Lucas objected. "I want to live on the third floor. Switch rooms with me," he said, as if it were the most natural request. He even stretched out his finger to pick his nose and wiped what he took out on the door panel. My mum frowned, glaring at Maya, struggling to hold back her anger. Lucas's parents agreed with him, claiming it would be better for the children to live together. "Sienna is much more delicate than Maya and is a better match for my son. If they get along, it will be more convenient for them to play together in the evening," Lucas's mother said with a sly glint in her eye, practically wanting to shove her son into my room. Maya blinked her big, innocent eyes and began to speak on behalf of her good brother. "Mom, let my brother stay on the third floor with us. He's a man and can protect me and my sister." My mom seemed conflicted, but still intended to refuse. "Living on the first floor is fine. The third floor is just for you two sisters. Don't let anyone else go up there." Maya lowered her head, looking pitiful, her voice soft. "But my brother will protect me. I've always lived with him since I was little. Now that I've found Mom and Dad, I don't want to be ungrateful." My mum was so moved that she almost agreed. Before she could, I spoke up. "Maya, If you're not ashamed, you can live on the first floor with your perfect brother. It's no problem if you share a room. It'll save him from having to climb the stairs. Sienna, what do you mean? Maya and my mother spoke simultaneously, with my mother's gaze at me showing some sternness. But before she could speak further, I addressed her. Mom, I know you feel sympathy for Maya, but you need to understand something. What matters more? Your daughter's dignity or your guilt towards her? Living with an unrelated man, especially given the remarks from his parents, is bound to raise suspicions. My mum, realizing the main concern, stopped hesitating. She shook her head at Maya. You two might have a good relationship, but I won't agree to the three of you living on the third floor together. Her tone was firm, showing no sign of yielding to Maya's attempts to smooth things over. Maya, frustrated, glared at me with contempt, but eventually turned back to comfort Lucas. Lucas, clearly humiliated and unaccustomed to such disgrace, kicked the doorframe, muttering angrily. Do you think I want to live in your house? If you don't want me here, then leave. You're so ungrateful after taking advantage of us. I shot back at him. If I had been reborn earlier, I would have stopped them from moving in, but now it's too late. I can't change that, but I will never let them bully me here like in my past life. In this second chance, I couldn't forget the injustice I had endured. I would repay every single wrong bit by bit. That night, I hardly slept. As soon as I closed my eyes, memories of my past life haunted me. I just wanted to be a good sister to the sibling who had been kidnapped for so many years. But in the end, I was despised, kidnapped, tortured for over 10 years, and ultimately killed. It became painfully clear that human hearts are impossible to fully understand, even with blood ties. When it came to scheming, even sisters could become terrifying enemies. Since she showed no mercy, I wouldn't be soft-hearted. I vowed to repay every unjust disaster from my previous life. The next morning, I woke early. After getting ready, I headed to the dining room on the first floor for breakfast. There were few meal rules at home, and we could eat once everyone was present. However, by nearly 8 o'clock, Lucas's father, mother, and Lucas were still asleep. The housekeeper went to wake them up, but was scolded in return. Lucas even threw a pillow out the door, complaining that he'd been up all night playing games and didn't want to be disturbed. My parents were furious, but Maya quickly adopted a docile expression, offering excuses for her adoptive parents. They probably didn't sleep well last night. Mom, Dad, if you're in a hurry, you can eat first. My sister and I can wait a little longer for them. Dad, who had an important meeting, glanced at the time and decided not to argue. After finishing their breakfast, they left home, reminding Maya and me, don't wait for us. Eat your breakfast first. Before I could say anything, Maya immediately objected. I'm younger, so I should wait for the elders. It's more polite. She then turned to me. Sister, you'll wait with me, right? I rolled my eyes. What a hypocrite. If you want to wait, do it yourself. Don't play the moral high ground with me. I turned my back and walked into the dining room. Maya's eyes filled with tears as she looked to my mom for support, but Mom, already displeased with her family, didn't care much about Maya's grievances. I added, Maya, don't wait for them. Who knows when they'll wake up? You're starving and it's not worth it. Maya's eyes turned red with frustration, but she continued to act well-behaved in front of my parents. After they left, she stormed over to me, scolding me from a self-righteous position. Older sister, you grew up with Mom and Dad, never having to worry about food or clothes. How can you not understand the importance of waiting for the elders to eat? I shot her a glance. If you're sick, go get treated. Don't bark at me. With that, I started eating my porridge. Just as I took a sip, I felt a rush of wind beside me, and a hand suddenly knocked my bowl over. Eating, eating, eating. Are you starving to death? Don't you know to wait for us to eat together? Lucas's mother had appeared behind me without warning. She glared at me as if she wanted to devour me. Lucas's father nodded in agreement, plopping down in Dad's seat. There still needs to be discipline. Acting like a spoiled princess is fine in front of others, but you'll have to serve my son well in the future, not even waiting for us at mealtime. Don't you have any manners? It was as if they owned the place. Seeing that they had backing, Maya straightened up, suddenly full of confidence. Exactly. Older sister. If you don't understand manners, you won't find a husband in the future. I looked at their faces, and the more I looked, the more disgusted I became. Without a second thought, I raised my hand and smashed the bowl in front of Lucas's father. The shards flew across his face, cutting him. The man who had been so arrogant moments ago was instantly scared stiff, like a quail. "Is this your place to sit?" I scolded him, my voice cold. "After living for so many years, do you not know common sense as a guest? If you don't, get out." Turning to Lucas's mother, I slapped her hard. "Who do you think you are acting like an elder in my home? How shameless can you be? You broke my bowl. This set is expensive and you better compensate me or I'll call the police." She stood frozen, holding her face, stunned by my fierceness. I finished my words before she could react, then grabbed Maya by the collar. "All day long you talk about marriage. Are you going to die if you don't get married? If you hate being single so much, who's stopping you from finding a man? Go find one now. You've been shameless for quite a while." Maya, caught off guard, stared at me in shock. With no parents around, she dropped her act, glaring at me with pure hatred and jealousy. "Sienna, you little brat. What's your problem? You actually dared to hit me? If I don't discipline you well, how can I face our ancestors?" Lucas's mother reacted first, eyes burning with fury, and reached out as if to grab me. But I held up a shard of porcelain, pointing the sharp edge at her, making her hesitate. She could only curse at me. Lucas's father, still bleeding from the cut on his cheek, stood silent, too weak to intervene. Maya, appearing emotionally shattered, rushed toward me, trying to hit me. But by then, my parents had left for work, and Lucas's parents had gone shopping, leaving just me, Lucas, and Maya. Maya, now fully desperate, screamed as I kicked Lucas over and over until he collapsed onto the floor. She rushed over to help him up and began scolding me. "Sienna, as a girl, how can you be so rude? Lucas, you're our older brother. What you're doing is wrong." I smirked. "How funny. What kind of older brother? If you want him as your boyfriend, go ahead. I don't mind. If you want to play, I'll even watch. But I don't have that kind of brother. Disgusting." I slammed the door shut, and in that moment, I saw the hatred in Maya's face twist with even more intensity. Good, if I don't push her, how can I send her straight to hell? Later, when my parents returned, I told them everything. "If you don't want more trouble in the house, you need to make Lucas's family leave." My mom hesitated. "But Maya," I interrupted. "Which is more important, her tears or the integrity of your two daughters?" Still indecisive, she seemed reluctant to act. That night, Lucas came back drunk and headed straight for my room. I had just been about to get a book in the study when I found the door not fully locked. He almost tackled me onto the sofa. I quickly dodged, grabbed something from the table, and hit him on the forehead, buying myself time to escape. "Sienna, I'm so good to you. What's wrong with marrying me? I promise I'll treat you well if you give me 2 sons, he slurred. I ran out. But he kept chasing me, trying to grab my clothes while his own were nearly torn off. It wasn't until my parents found us and called the police that Lucas's family was finally kicked out. After my parents took notes at the station, we returned home. I went upstairs to rest, but Maya was standing at the top of the stairs staring down at me. "He hardly ever drinks. How could he suddenly go crazy?" I didn't respond and headed straight for my room. "Sometimes," I said, "it's not that hard to get someone to drink too much. Friends, brothers from the streets, sometimes mistakenly become brothers, then go out drinking. Before they know it, they've been talking about their latest escapades and things just escalate." Maya stood behind me, smirking. "Sienna, do you really think you've won?" I turned, my voice steady. "No, but being locked up for a few days won't calm my anger." The next day, Lucas's parents stood at the entrance, holding a sign claiming they had raised Maya and that my parents had promised to marry me to Lucas to repay them. They spoke with conviction, making it seem like my parents had promised to marry me to their son. The crowd gathered, many people not having seen Lucas, began to believe them. Breaking off the engagement is one thing, but how could they kick 2 elderly people out without considering the effort it took for them to come here? "At least they should provide some compensation," Maya's parents complained. More and more harsh comments were circulating among the neighbours. "Sister, are you going to address this?" Maya asked with a grin. "But if you explain, everyone will know that you almost got involved with him, and your reputation at school will be even more interesting." "Interesting?" I responded. "I think it's quite amusing. Reputation is something you can't take with you when you die. Do you really think I care about that? In my previous life, I endured so much torment, and for me, the most important thing now is to live truthfully. Besides, I was the victim here, so why should I hide it out of fear of rumours? I wasn't the one who did something wrong. I have nothing to be ashamed of, and I certainly won't hold my head down." So when I presented Lucas's clear photo and the police report from last night to the public, the onlookers quickly shifted their views. "So it's their family trying to climb the social ladder. They said their son was handsome, but after seeing this photo, it's ridiculous." Some even went as far as to say, if they were truly repaying a favour by marrying off their daughter, it should have been the younger one, who grew up alongside the other. Isn't that suspicious? Could it be child trafficking? This is serious. Many law-abiding citizens, including myself, called the police. Initially, public opinion had been on their side, but now people were discussing whether this family had committed a crime, and many pulled out their phones to report it. Seeing this, Lucas's parents shot me a resentful glare, and it seemed they were preparing to flee. Before they could leave, I asked, "Whose idea was this? It's clear you wanted to land yourselves in jail with such malicious intentions." Lucas's mother was about to curse me, but the words stuck in her throat, and she looked away, her eyes full of hatred, now directed at my family's villa. "Sorry, I can do that too," I said. When news spread online that I had intentionally abandoned my sister, I knew Maya had fully committed to ruining me. Tomorrow I was going back to school, and I knew I'd be the centre of attention. In my previous life, she had constantly spread rumours online, accusing me of deliberately abandoning her to human traffickers just so I could monopolise our parents' attention. The online sentiment turned increasingly hostile. Though I had provided ample evidence, some people still began creating conspiracy theories. In short, the truth was too dull for some to believe. They preferred to believe in baseless gossip. Much like in my previous life, my counsellor called me, asking me to return to school the next morning. However, on my way back, I was kidnapped. After finishing the call with my counsellor, I noticed Maya sitting next to me, watching with a twisted sense of delight. She was scrolling through posts on her phone. Some of the comments were extreme, accusing me of being manipulative at such a young age. My parents looked worried as they glanced at the posts. Even as the ones involved, they were merely seen as trying to protect me. The matter had occurred years ago, and there was no concrete evidence, just a handful of fabricated claims stirring up a frenzy online. It was almost laughable. I silently observed Maya, who seemed to be intentionally provoking me. She handed me her phone, pointing at the comments. "Sister, why do they say such things about you?" she asked. Then she ran to my parents, pretending to be concerned. "Why are our family matters all over the internet now? It's just a flood of insults directed at my sister. What should we do?" I weighed her phone in my hand, unimpressed. "Stop pretending. Aren't you tired of it?" I shot her a cold look and stood up from the couch, heading upstairs. As expected, Maya followed me closely, all the way to the staircase where she finally called out to me. "Sienna, I really see you as my sister, which is why I want you to marry Lucas. Haven't you considered being with him?" This was the same thing she had said in my previous life, and I had rejected her without hesitation. It was only later that I realised this was her ultimatum. This time I still refused, raising my hand and slapping her across the face. "Maya, isn't it exhausting to wear a mask? You posted those things online and then pretend to be innocent at home. You keep saying how great Lucas is. If he's so great, why don't you marry him? I'm not blind. The way you look at Lucas behind his back is pure disgust." I spoke softly, but my words sliced through the air. At that moment, everyone else was downstairs in the living room, and Maya and I stood at the staircase, easily visible to those below. She rested her hands on the railing, staring downstairs, her innocent expression shifting into one of malicious calculation. So, what if I posted it? The world sympathizes with the weak. I may have fabricated some baseless facts, but you can't prove I'm lying. As for Lucas, if you marry him obediently, I might consider letting you off the hook. But if you don't, I'll make you regret it. She glared at me, her gaze full of venom. All right, I'll be watching, she added, her eyes burning with hatred. The next day I headed to school. I declined my father's offer to drive me, as Maya had hoped. I exited the subway and walked down a quiet alley where no cameras were. Where is everyone? Maya, dressed in a black windbreaker and tightly masked, entered the alley expecting to relish the sight of my terrified expression when I was captured. But when she arrived, the alley was empty. Just as she was about to leave, the people she had been communicating with on her phone rushed in from another alley. They carried a drugged cloth meant to knock me out quickly. The method they used to abduct me was exactly the same as in my previous life. I stood silently, observing from a nearby building, knowing full well how she had schemed against me before. This time, I was prepared. I had already gotten the numbers of those people in advance. When Maya was pretending to act innocent in front of my parents and handed me my phone to provoke me, it had saved me the effort of trying to snatch her phone. I quickly sent a text to the saved number, pushing the originally scheduled time back by 5 minutes and instructed that no further replies were necessary. This was a simple task. Maya thought she would witness my terror when I begged for mercy on my knees after being captured, which is why she arrived later than the others. A 5-minute delay was enough for them to abduct someone else. I may not be the best person, but as long as no one harms me, I won't harm them. But if someone hurts me, I'll claw my way out of hell and drag them down with me. When Maya went missing, my parents immediately stopped what they were doing and began searching for her. Seeing their anxious expressions, I was reminded of how they had looked when I had gone missing in my past life. But this time, it was different. They found Maya in just 2 days. Maya had previously instructed them to break my hands and feet and cut out my tongue once she was captured. After everything had transpired, the plan was for them to contact Maya, exchanging her for money. However, this time, the employer had been tied up, and no one could reach her. By the time they discovered the issue, Maya had already had her limbs broken and her tongue cut out. She had caused a huge mess without even receiving the money. Enraged, the people responsible for her situation beat her and then discarded her in the outskirts before fleeing. A homeless man found Maya and called the police, and she was taken to the hospital. It seemed her resentment in this life was even stronger than in the previous one. She hated me more now than before. In my past life, she had only wanted to break my hands and feet, but there was at least a chance of recovery. This time she had ordered for my limbs to be severed. When my parents went to the doctor's office, I looked at Maya lying in the hospital bed without her hands and legs and couldn't help but think, serves you right. That phrase fit perfectly. She had her tongue cut out, and while she couldn't speak, she glared at me with such intensity as if she wanted to devour me. I walked closer, observing her face, which should have been beautiful but was now disfigured with bruises and scars. My hand gently landed on her arm, gripping the large bruise tightly. As she curled up in pain on the bed, I felt a surge of satisfaction. Maya, this is the result of your scheming. You reap what you sow. I'm no saint. I can't repay evil with kindness. I just want those who have plotted against me to feel the same pain, doubled. But I couldn't let someone like her ruin my life. In my previous life, she left scars on my body with her whip, but I couldn't do the same to her. My future is bright and shouldn't be destroyed by her. So, I had to act more carefully. Maya couldn't speak and had no limbs, but when the police arrived, she still tried to accuse me, claiming that I was the one who harmed her. I can cooperate with the investigation. What did I do? The text had been sent from her phone, and by now, my fingerprints had long been wiped away. Upon further investigation, it would be revealed that Maya had hired someone to kidnap me. By a twist of fate, she ended up becoming the victim instead of me. I handed the audio of my conversation with Maya on the staircase to my parents. In it, she admitted to spreading rumors about me online, and acknowledge that everything she had done was meant to hurt me. This gave us solid evidence to strengthen the case against her. "Maya, do you think this is your end?" I whispered, as I ran my fingers through her hair. She struggled violently, but I pressed her firmly into the bed. No, it wasn't over yet. Counting the days, I knew that Lucas should have been released from the detention center by now. He had been held for a few days due to harassment while intoxicated. How could someone like him, pampered his entire life, swallow his pride? Meanwhile, the child trafficking case continued to gain attention online. Being a buyer was also a crime, and both individuals involved were sentenced to 3 years in prison. For someone like Lucas, with no skills and no support from his parents, those 3 years would be incredibly difficult. Lucas's mother, however, told him it was all Maya's doing. When someone has nothing left, they become unpredictable. They have nothing to lose. If it weren't for the scene he caused at the neighborhood entrance, the child trafficking case wouldn't have surfaced. Without that, he wouldn't have lost everything. If there's a grudge, it must be avenged. One day, while I was home getting clothes for Maya, something major happened at the hospital. A man snuck into the ward and secretly took Maya away. As he left, he muttered to himself, "You took away my parents and now you won't even be my wife? I'll make you my wife, and you'll give me 3 sons." When the police found them, Maya was filthy, everything she had done to me now coming back to her, only worse. The mad Lucas refused to let anyone take his wife from him. He ran up to the roof of a high-rise building, clutching Maya tightly. It was winter, and the cold wind cut through the air. Maya wore only a thin layer of clothing, already tortured beyond recognition. Lucas wasn't much better. After years of being financially supported, he now had no income and was forced to live in hiding, stealing today and robbing tomorrow. Eventually, the police found him. "I'm not letting you take my wife away." Lucas kept retreating, but in the dead of winter, the icy ground caused him to slip. The 2 of them fell from the building together. 2 lives, 2 fates. In the end, it was the best outcome. Later, my mum asked if I had played a part in everything that happened, if I had plotted against Maya. I told her a story about a girl who loved her sister but was betrayed. She endured years of darkness and suffering, and every day she prayed that if she ever got a chance, she would seek revenge. I asked her, "If you were that girl, would you choose to repay evil with kindness?" Mum smiled through her tears. "But they're sisters," she said, though deep down she understood. They were nothing more than 2 enemies who shared the same blood. Later, I graduated successfully. Perhaps in some parallel universe, I was meant to be locked in that dark room, enduring a fate worse than death. But in this reality, those who tried to threaten my life had all fallen. Their downfall was the result of their own misdeeds. Now, I am free to live my life however I choose, with no one standing in my way. I can now live a long and fulfilling life.